Fair warning, people, this film is pretty offensive. It's from that misogynistic trend that was a thing in the 1960s sexploitation scene for a while, but worse than even that is even though this film is from 1969, when such things were allowed and even encouraged, there is no appearance here of a former president. Welcome to Exploitation Reviews, and me, Rob, and today I'm taking a look at All Women Are Bad from 1969. Something Weird Video insists that they are not going out of business, but their business is changing in some kind of way, and the last day to buy downloads from their library was October 31st. I don't know exactly what the future holds for them, and I don't know which parts of their library will survive whatever changes they're going to go through. So, a few weeks back, I hopped on there for maybe one last time, and I bought a few obscure roughies that I hadn't seen. This is one of them. Let's check it out. No cold open here. We open on a title card. Oh, American Film Distributing Corp. That's Stan Borden's company. He distributed films for the Finlays, Joseph P. Maurer, and the Amaro brothers. We are in good company. Our main character is a door-to-door salesman. He tells us via voiceover that on this particular day there wasn't much business going on, so he walked into the forest to take a nap. On the ground. No mat, no blanket, just on the dirt. In a suit. So we can immediately tell that he's from New Jersey. When he wakes up, he hears a weird sound like a dog whistle which is calling to him. So he follows it, and he eventually finds what it was leading him to.
That was what was calling to me. Civilization.
Maybe civilization will teach him what a picnic blanket is. Anyway, he returns home and finds his wife in bed with another man. What we see is pretty mild by the standards of 1969, but still way too saucy by the standards of YouTube in 2024.
Now I just work here.
But of course, we don't have to stay here. You can now support the channel on Patreon for $1 a month. Upgrade to $3 a month and get access to uncensored versions of my reviews. The link is in the description, and your support is very much appreciated. Our guy does not interrupt the lovers. Instead, he runs out of his house and he boards a ferry on its way to New York. He quickly finds an apartment in the city, and before he even makes it to his room, he starts spying on his neighbor. She's an artist and puts the moves on her model. Our creep in the hallway concludes from her behavior that she, just like his wife, just like all women, is bad. And I know what you're thinking, Rob, hey, wait a minute. A guy finds his wife in bed with another man, he runs out into the city and comes to the conclusion that all women are bad. We've seen that movie before. That's the plot of Michael Finlay's The Touch of Her Flesh. And yeah, I know, I was thinking exactly the same thing. You and me? Connected. But there are some differences here. One, our creep in this movie is more of a peeping Tom than a murderer, so it's considerably less violent than the Finlay films. And two, when our guy here is doing his peeping, he hallucinates that the women he is peeping on are actually his wife. So the film takes on a kind of surreal tone. So if you like the Finlay films, but think you'd prefer surrealist voyeurism more than murder, this might be your movie. Personally, I prefer the murder.
The more repulsive, the better I like it.
Anyway, the artist turns into our peeper's wife, which disturbs him, so he moves down the hall and spies on a few other ladies. They seem wholesome enough, but our weirdo is quickly convinced that they are also bad. He heads out into the city and winds up at a strip club. Oh, hey, check it out. One of the strippers there is an uncredited Janet Banzet. She appeared in a number of sexploitation films in the New York 60s scene, including in a few of Michael Finlay's films. According to John Amaro, she was a lovely person. Sadly, she died in 1971. Anyway, back to the strip club, which is obviously not a strip club, but a hotel room with some fabric hanging on a blank wall. One of the strippers turns into our creepazoid's wife. And then, in one of the film's most bizarre sequences, a ridiculous gay stereotype enters the club and picks up a guy. Our creepazoid follows them back to some apartment and watches them, and then one of the guys turns into his wife. Pretty weird. There are a number of other very strange sequences in this movie that I'll more or less save for whoever amongst you wants to track down this oddball movie. But for now, let's just say that the film continues in much the same way. Our guy spies on various people, including some hippies enjoying a sesh that turns into an orgy. He sees some light bondage, some whipping, some feather tickling with this thing. And at one point, a man gets involved with a corpse. So yeah, this thing is pretty freaking weird. But that's enough out of me as far as plot goes. Let's talk some highlights. Some of the ladies here, including the Creepazoid's wife, are gorgeous. 60s exploitation films are often populated with gorgeous people, and this one is no exception. But what was particularly nice here is that, with the exception of Janet Banzet, all of the faces were new to me. I mean, hardly anyone in this movie appeared in anything else, so I guess that's not a big surprise. Beyond the ladies, there's some interesting photography in this movie. I like the scenes where the guy is confused by what he's seeing. He's shot in front of these circles. It's simple but effective. In fact, it reminds me of the poster for the 1967 film Something Weird. So what a fun coincidence that was for maybe one of my final purchases from Something Weird Video. But beyond the nice looking ladies and some cool photography and just the overall fun weirdness of this thing, I wouldn't say the film is perfect. Like a creepazoid watching people turn into his wife, this film has some shortcomings. Well, this film gets off to a pretty slow start. He discovers his wife's infidelity at around the 6-minute mark, and then we get close to 10 minutes of him traveling to New York by ferry. I do think it's pretty interesting to see a ferry in 1969 pull into New York, but I didn't need 10 minutes of it. Especially when the entire movie is just a bit over 60 minutes long, so that's quite a lot of time spent on basically nothing. And the voiceover during this section is pretty bad too. It's almost like the actor knew this was taking too long and didn't know what to say. Thankfully, after that ferry ride, the film does pick up the pace. But the improved pace doesn't really make up for the fact this film is pretty tame by what we could expect in 1969. I mean, this film is pretty clearly, to me anyway, aping Finlay's A Touch of Her Flesh, but that one is more explicit and it came out in 1967. By 1969, in this New York sexploitation scene, we could expect a lot more. I mean, 1969 is the year Finlay released The Ultimate Degenerate, which is way, way crazier than this thing. Finally, if you are the easily offended type, you will not like the gay character in this movie. What am I saying? Nobody who watches my show will be offended by anything in this movie. This is the real world. This isn't the internet.